You're listening to the Quint's podcast.
At around 7:40 p.m. on 7th August, Air India Express flight IX-1344 with 190 passengers on board from Dubai to Kozhikode skidded off the runway of Karipur International Airport in Kerala. Soon after, visuals of the wreckage filled television and social media. The mangled remains of an aircraft split into two as it continued to rain. A chaotic scene ensued, with people rushing to help and hours taken to evacuate everyone. An unforeseen tragedy in which 18 people lost their lives, including the pilots, Captain Deepak Sathe and co-pilot Akhilesh Kumar, was compounded by the fact that the passengers on board were returning home in a special flight arranged to bring back Indians stranded in other countries due to the COVID-19 pandemic. As the Boeing 737 aircraft touched down upon Indian soil, amid torrential downpour, it overshot the tabletop runway and fell 35 feet down the slope. As the investigation is underway into the how and the why of the accident, the Quint spoke with a former Indian Air Force fighter pilot, Group Captain Somala Srinivas, to get a pilot's perspective on a number of important questions. Are tabletop runways dangerous? How does rain complicate landing? The decisions that a pilot must make in adverse conditions, and how an investigation into an incident like this is carried out. You're tuned in to The Big Story, the podcast where we dissect the headline-making news for you, and I'm your host, Sushovan. The last time a similar tragedy struck was a decade ago when an Air India flight skidded off Mangalore International Airport's runway, caught fire, and eventually killed 158 people on board. A critical difference between the two crashes was that in Kozhikode, the aircraft did not catch fire, whereas in Mangalore, fire and asphyxiation led to a much higher death toll. But a critical similarity is that they are both tabletop runways. Tabletop runways are typically built on hilly or mountainous areas with slopes on sides. They are constructed by chopping off the top of a hill and are often thought of as a tricky place for landings because of the lack of any margin for error. So, is it riskier to land on tabletop runways as compared to a runway on plain land?
Tabletops. Okay. Why is a runway required there? There was no other place where they could have made one. In hilly regions, when they make this kind of runway also has to be located in such a place where an approach to the runway and takeoff from the runway is possible. Suppose you situated the runway in the valley. Okay, if you situated the runway in the valley, there is a lot of space. You can have a 10,000 feet runway. That means a huge one. 10 to 12,000 feet runway, 4 kilometers runway, which is ideal, which you want. If anything happens and all, there's got adequate space for a person to stop. But now the place is all surrounded by hills. You cannot approach it. You cannot take off, vertically from there. So you have to select a via media, and then that's where you come to these kind of places, which is where an aircraft in the current situation can approach, land, and take off comfortably. So that's why you typically find these kind of places selected for the runways. Second, what is the problem with the tabletop? It has got a limited length for a runway. At certain places, it's large enough. Like, for example, Srinagar is also a tabletop, but the runway is more than 3 kilometers. Okay, so more than 3 kilometers. So there's no big deal out there. You've got enough space to create the safety areas beyond the runway where, because of an incident, if the aircraft is unable to stop, it gets arrested in the sand or the surfaces which are prepared to arrest an aircraft from getting damaged further. Here, that kind of overrun area is not available. When the runway finishes, there's hardly a little bit of space for this arrestor area, and there is a steep drop. Like in this particular case, the aircraft fell 35 feet below and then broke in two parts. Obviously, when you fall from that kind of thing and all with this structure, it won't stay in place.
Group Captain Srinivas, who has conducted several inquiries into aircraft accidents during his time in the Air Force, warns that it is extremely difficult to pinpoint reasons. Three important factors come in at this point, all of them interrelated: the weather condition, in this case heavy rain, the runway, and the pilot's range of visibility. Srinivas explains these three factors through the concept of aquaplaning, and also goes on to explain the decision making by pilots when it is raining but it is also time to land.
And how does the water affect you? Water can cause something called aquaplaning. Okay, that means when you land, depending on the thickness of the layer of the water on the runway, which is typically what is termed as contamination. Contamination is, how much of the water is on the runway, or how much of snow is on the runway, or how much of oil is on the runway, those kind of stuff. Okay. So if the layer is thick enough, the tires do not make adequate contact with the runway. There is a film of water formed between the tire and the runway, and the braking is totally ineffective. It just keeps skidding over. So it's called aquaplaning. So that is the kind of effects of having films and layers of water on the runway. Okay, the weather is bad. The pilots know the weather. Now there is nothing called weather is bad in general. It is bad for the purpose if the pilot has got a minima of landing of 500 feet or 500 meters. If the weather conditions are such that the runway visual range is less than this, that means you cannot see the runway beyond this, less than this, he's not supposed to land. If it is within this criteria, within his criteria for landing, he will go ahead and land. That's about it. So it's not that if it's raining, you should land or you should not land. It is a minima fitness criteria for landing for the pilot, for the aircraft, and the airfield navigational facilities. So all these three things were within limits. That's why I elected to go in for the landing.
And finally, what happens after the crash? We have heard about the black box and the cockpit voice recorder, or CVR, but how exactly are they used in the investigation? And what about the thousands of pieces of debris like broken engine parts, tires, electrical components that perhaps contain hidden clues? Surely a Herculean task. Group Captain Srinivas explains the method behind the madness of piecing together bits of chaos to tell the complete story of the crash.
Once the black box is with you, there are two things. What you call as the black box is the digital data recorder. And this data recorder records each and every bit of information that is relevant for the aircraft's safe flying and for forensic purpose. And it's done second to second. And there are many things which are done in milliseconds also. Okay, so there's a whole lot of detailed information available to you, and if this data recorder is available intact, it's the biggest help in forensic analysis. And the second thing which is available to you is the cockpit voice recorder. So you correlate what was the conversation between the pilots, between the ATC, and between the other members and all, and you can correlate at various times and all, and you can probably figure out as to what was playing on the minds of the crew at a particular time. Okay, so these two things are there. So when you start up the investigation, okay, the first thing that you do is inspection of the crash site, collect all the crashed materials, each and every bit and piece of the aircraft, thousands and millions of pieces. They will comb it and everything. They'll collect it. They'll take it back. They will sort it out. They will put things together: the engines, the electronics, the radios, so the cockpit stuff and all. They'll put it on, and then they'll start piecing it together. In the meanwhile, they'll be looking for the digital data recorders, the CVRs, and all of that stuff and all. So each and every bit and information is picked up right from word go, including pictures and videos, because when I think impacts on the ground, the scatter pattern of the pieces, etc., tell you a lot, and the state in which it was recovered. So the burn marks and the deformation in the state, and whether it was facing upward or it is facing downward, each and everything will matter in an investigation. So they will take pictures, detailed videos, detailed geographical positions of the stuff they collected, and they will get the data recorder, they will get the voice recorders, and one by one they will start piecing them together in trying to put the jigsaw puzzle together. It's a humongous task.
Given the enormity of the task at hand and complexity of factors at play, Group Captain Srinivas, who has presided over courts of inquiry, acknowledges that this is an emotional issue, but also reminds listeners of the importance of sticking to the facts and avoiding conspiracy theories. He cautions against an important problem that has struck several high-profile events and incidents in the country of late.
I've flown enough. I've conducted courts of inquiry in the Indian Air Force for various accidents, and I have faced them also for certain incidents which happened while I was flying. The worst thing that can happen is a trial by media. That you all agree. There's no doubt about it. And the only thing that what we should try and do is put the perspective correct without trying to bias anybody's mind.
If you liked listening to this podcast, please subscribe to the Big Story playlist for episodic updates. We are live on Apple, Google Podcast, Spotify, JioSaavn, and other popular podcast streaming platforms. For other podcasts, please log on to the Quint website and check out our podcast section. For any feedback, just shoot an email to podcasts@thequint.com.